I was traveling alone to see family in another country, and I wanted one specific thing out of where I slept. Privacy, a place to myself. Not a spare room in someone's house, not a sofa, not a shared kitchen, a whole little unit with my own door that I could lock and be no one's guest inside of. So I booked the cheapest standalone flat I could find. A separate entrance, the listing said. Your own space. That phrase is the reason I picked it. The host was supposed to meet me to hand over the key, and he showed up an hour late. When he got there, he was openly a little drunk, loose, too friendly, smelling of it. And the first thing he did, before hello almost, was ask me not to mention in my review that he'd been drinking. He laughed when he said it. I laughed too, the way you do to keep a stranger comfortable. I took the key. I told myself, he's harmless, he's just had a few. I'll be behind my own door in 5 minutes. Behind my own door. I really believed that was a place that existed. The flat was small and fine. A bed, a little bathroom, a kitchenette, and it was attached to the side of his house. Not a separate building, not the separate entrance I'd pictured. It was the lower half of his own home, walled off into a rental, with my front door on one side, and on the inside wall behind the bed, another door. A plain interior door I almost didn't clock. A connecting door, straight through into the house where he lived. I went and tried it, the way you check a thing you don't like the look of. Locked. Good, I thought. Locked is good. And then I looked for the way to lock it from my side, the bolt or the latch a guest controls, and there wasn't one. No bolt, no chain, no thumb turn, just a keyhole. A door I could not lock or unlock at all, because the lock only worked with a key, and I didn't have it. He did, on his side, the only one. I want to be fair to how I felt right then, because it wasn't terror yet. It was a small, cold note of wrong that I talked myself out of. Plenty of rentals are carved out of a bigger house. The connecting door's locked. It's fine. He's not going to come through a locked door. That was the whole of my reasoning. He's not going to use the key. And I believed that because it was easier than the other thing. He didn't leave right away either. He hovered at my front door for a while, oversharing, his divorce, his money troubles, how quiet it got out here. Standing half in my doorway, not quite coming in, not quite going. And I did the polite dance back, nodding, edging the door, until he finally peeled off and I heard him go up into the main house. Footsteps, over my head and behind my wall. Him moving around his home, which was also the other side of my bedroom. I told myself it was like having a noisy neighbor. It was not like having a neighbor. I got ready for bed slowly, the way you do somewhere new, listening to the unfamiliar sounds settle. And around 11, I decided to shower before sleep. I had my things in my hand. I was a minute, maybe 2, from being undressed and under the water. In a flat with a connecting door I couldn't lock, and a man on the other side of it who could. And just as I reached to set my clothes down, I heard it. Movement behind the bed. On his side of that door. Coming closer, and then stopping right at it. There was a knock on the connecting door. Soft, 2 knuckles. And then my name. He said my name, low, through the wood, like we were old friends and this was normal. And in the half second after my name, before I had answered, before I had moved, before I had said a single word, I heard the key go into the lock. Not a request. He hadn't waited to hear, "Come in." He hadn't waited to hear anything. The knock and my name weren't him asking. They were him announcing that he was already coming through. I was across the room from that door and I could not get to it in time. And it would not have mattered if I had, because there was nothing on my side to hold. The key turned, the handle went down, and the door I'd told myself was locked, that I'd let be my comfort all evening, swung open into the room where I stood, half ready for bed. He was in the gap. In a doorway I could neither open nor close nor lock, standing in the dark of his house, looking into the light of where I slept. And the only thing that had ever been keeping him out was that, until this exact minute, he'd chosen not to come in. Sorry, he said, easy, smiling, stepping a foot into my room. I think I left my phone in here earlier, just grabbing it. And he looked around, at the bed, at me, at my clothes in my hands. Slow, unhurried, in no rush at all to find a phone. There was no phone. We both knew the shape of what this was, even as he patted the nightstand and made the show of it. He had opened a door into a woman's bedroom at 11 at night with a key that was his and a lock that was his. And the lie was so thin it wasn't really meant to be believed. It was just meant to be allowed. I said, very evenly, that I hadn't seen a phone and that I was about to go to bed, and I held the door, my front door, open to the night so he'd have to walk past it. And he took the hint, slow, still smiling, back through the connecting door into his house. And he pulled it shut behind him, and I heard the key turn again, locking it from his side, locking me back in. Because that was the only direction that lock ever worked. He could open it whenever he wanted. All I could do was wait to find out whether he would again. I called my brother, quietly, in the bathroom, with the water running so the sound wouldn't carry through the wall. I told him I needed to come stay with him, tonight, now, and I couldn't really explain it in a way that sounded like an emergency, because on paper, nothing had happened. A host had come into a rental he owned, through a door he had the key to look for a phone. That's all it was, if you wrote it down. There was nothing to report and no one to call but family. I packed in the dark and I sat on the edge of the bed with my bag and my eyes on that connecting door, and I waited for headlights. My brother came around midnight. I went out my own front door, fast, and I didn't knock on the main house, and I didn't say goodbye. And the whole short walk to the car, the back of my neck was turned to that house, to all those dark windows that looked down on me, any one of which could have had him standing at it. I never found out what the late visit was really for. Maybe nothing, maybe a phone. But a man who'll turn a key into a sleeping woman's room on a lie that thin is a man you do not stay to give a second chance. I still travel alone. I still rent strangers' places. But something in how I read a listing changed for good that night. Separate entrance isn't enough anymore. Private isn't enough. I look for the doors I can't see in the photos, the connecting one, the staff one, the one behind the bed, and I ask before I ever book, who else holds a key to where I'll be asleep? If the answer is anybody, I don't take it, because the lock was never the thing keeping me safe. It was just deciding which side of it I was trapped on. I never again rent a door I'm not the only one who can lock. I was staying in my sister's apartment for a couple of weeks while she was away, watching her place, watching her dog, a big soft-headed thing that came up to my hip. It was a nice building, secured. Key fob to get in the front, key fob for the elevator, cameras in the lobby, the kind of place that's sold to you on safety. And I felt safe those first days, anonymous even. Just another person coming and going in a building full of strangers who didn't know each other's names. That anonymity cuts both ways, though. In a building like that, nobody knows who belongs. You don't know your neighbors. You can't tell a resident from a visitor from a worker. Everyone's just a face in a hallway with a reason to be there that you take on faith. And I was the most anonymous person in the whole place, because I didn't live there at all. I was a guest in a building of people who at least had a unit with their name on it. I had a dog and a key fob in 2 weeks. It was early one morning, just back from walking the dog, that I first saw him. By the elevators in the lobby, a man in work clothes, a polo, a tool bag, the look of building maintenance, someone who'd be there to fix a sink or a light. He fit the scene completely. That's the thing I keep coming back to. He looked like he belonged, the way the carpet in the mailboxes belonged. And the dog, who likes everyone, planted his feet and didn't want to walk toward him. I should have read the dog. I read the polo shirt instead. The elevator came and he gestured for me to go ahead, polite, holding it. And every instinct I have said, don't get in a small box with him. And every bit of manners I have said, you can't refuse a man holding a door because he's wearing a tool bag. The manners won. I got in with the dog. And as the doors closed, I noticed the thing that turned my stomach over. He didn't press a floor. He just stood there facing me, in an elevator going up to no floor he'd chosen. He started talking, friendly, the second the doors shut. "You live here? I don't think I've seen you." And I said something light, just staying a while, helping family out. And he nodded, and he kept going, easy, smiling. "Which apartment are you in?" Not which floor, which apartment. And then, when I didn't answer fast enough, "What's the number?" A man with a tool bag, who hadn't pressed a button, asking a woman alone in an elevator for the exact number of the door she sleeps behind. And here's where being the guest, the anonymous one, saved me, because I genuinely fumbled it. I didn't know my sister's apartment number by heart. I'd been getting in by fob and by memory of which door, not by the number. So when he asked, the truth came out as a stammer. "Oh, honestly, I always forget it's my sister's. I just know which one it is." And I watched him take that in, that I couldn't name my own door, that I was exactly what I was, someone staying there who didn't really live there, who no front desk had a name and unit on file for. The elevator reached a floor. Not mine, I made sure of that. I'd pressed one below and said, "This is me." And I got off fast with the dog, and the doors closed with him still inside, still not having pressed anything, riding on alone in a box going nowhere. I took the stairs up the last flight, heart going, telling myself I'd overreacted to a chatty maintenance guy. "He works here." He was being friendly. "You're being dramatic." And I almost had myself believing it, right up until I stepped out onto my sister's balcony a few minutes later to let the dog get some air and look down. He was at the pool, down in the courtyard, by the water, in the same polo and tool bag, except he wasn't fixing anything, and there was no one in the pool, and he wasn't looking at the pool. He was standing at the edge of it with his head tipped all the way back, looking up at the building, up at the stacked rows of balconies, floor over floor over floor, his face turned up to them, slowly moving, reading them. I stepped back from the rail, into the shadow of the doorway, before some animal part of me even knew why. And I watched him from there, half hidden, because he wasn't scanning randomly. He was working. His head was tilting in little increments, balcony to balcony, like a man keeping his place in a list, and his lips were moving, not talking to anyone, counting. I could see it even from up there. He was counting. And then his head stopped moving. It tipped to one spot and held. And I will never be sure. I was back in the shadow. I couldn't have been certain, but it held on my floor, on the row of balconies that mine was in. And he lowered his head, slow, and looked down at something, a phone, a notepad, his own hand, I couldn't tell, like a man writing down the answer he just worked out. And then he walked, unhurried, out of the courtyard, toward the doors that led back inside, back toward the elevators, toward the count he'd just finished. I went inside and I did not do anything brave. I locked the balcony door. I locked the front door, the deadbolt, the chain. I got the dog into the bedroom with me and I shut that door too. And I sat on the floor against the bed with my back to the wall and my phone in my hand, listening to the building. Every ding of the elevator down the hall, every set of footsteps in the corridor that slowed, or didn't. Waiting for one of them to stop outside a door he'd had to count his way to. And nothing came. That's the truth of it, and it's somehow not a relief. No knock, no handle tried, no footsteps that stopped. I sat against that bed until it got dark, and then, most of the night, and the elevator dinged and the corridor stayed empty, and at some point the dog sighed and lay down, and I knew, the way you trust a dog, that whatever had been near wasn't anymore. He never came up. Or he came up and counted wrong and stood outside the wrong door, and I'll never know which. He just stopped somewhere out there in a building full of doors and went back to being a man in a polo who belonged. I finished the 2 weeks somewhere else. I packed the dog up the next morning and went to a friend's, and I told my sister her sink was fine, but I'd gotten spooked, and I left it vague. What I carry from it isn't really him. It's how easy I was to find precisely because I belonged to no one there. No name on a unit, no neighbor who'd notice, no front desk that could have said, "She doesn't match." Just a guest, anonymous, which I thought was the safe way to be. So now when I stay in someone else's place, I learn the number by heart. I tell a neighbor I'm there. I make myself someone the building would miss. I never want to be that easy to find again. My friend and I were staying a few nights at a hotel in a city neither of us knew for an event downtown. Nice enough place, a bar attached to the lobby, the kind where the hotel and the bar bleed into each other, and you're never quite sure where one ends. We went down the first night for one drink before bed. Two women traveling, a little tired, in a strange city, in the one spot in the whole hotel where strangers and guests mix without anyone checking which is which. That's where he found us. Not in our room, in the place the hotel left open to everyone. He was friendly in the way that's hard to refuse without feeling rude. Bought us around before we could say no, settled in, easy, charming. And early on he mentioned, like it was nothing, that he worked there, at the hotel. Said it casual, in passing, the way you'd mention where you're from. He works here. He's basically part of the place. And we relaxed a little, the way you do. But the longer we sat, the more the little things didn't add up. He kept getting up and disappearing, not to the men's room, off toward the hotel itself, through the doors into the lobby, gone for a few minutes, then back. Over and over. And once I watched him go behind the bar like he owned it, and another time he was further in, near the front desk, talking to someone there, leaning on the counter. In and out of the hotel's own rooms and back, comfortable everywhere, in a way that was either exactly what staff does or exactly what someone wants you to read as staff. The in and out of him got to my friend the same time it got to me. I saw it cross her face. We had that silent conversation women have over a table, the one that's just eyes and a tilt of the head, and it said, "Drink up, we're going." So we did. We flagged the check, we paid it fast, and we said a polite good night to him, and we went to the elevator and up to our room, and I thought, walking in and bolting the door, that we'd gotten out clean. And here's the one thing I'd hold on to later. We never told him our room. Not the number, not the floor. We never told him our names to check against a booking. We were careful, we're always careful. We didn't write it down, didn't say it out loud, didn't let him walk us up. We never told a soul where we were sleeping. He had nothing from us at all. We went to bed. And for a while, it was just an odd night we'd left behind us. The way you do. Laughed about it a little in the dark. The strange flat bar, the too friendly guy. Locked door, high floor, two of us, safe. And I drifted off the way you do in a hotel. Not deep, that thin traveler's sleep. Half an ear still up in a room that isn't yours. Which is how, around 4 a.m, I came awake all at once with a dry mouth and a flat hotel quiet pressing on my ears, and decided to go down for water and air. My friend was asleep, so I went quiet, slipped on shoes, took the key card, eased the door so the latch wouldn't wake her. Out into the corridor, that long hush of a hotel hallway at 4 a.m. Every identical door shut, the carpet eating my footsteps. The little exit signs the only color in all of it. And I walked down to the elevators at the end of the hall and pressed the button to go down. Standing there alone in that gray light, watching the floor numbers climb toward me, thinking about nothing worse than water. The car arrived. I heard it settle, the soft tone, the little pause before the doors part. And I stepped forward the way you do, already moving to get on, and the doors opened, and he was already inside it. Him, the man from the bar, standing in the back corner of the elevator, at 4 a.m, on my floor, facing the doors as they opened, like he'd been waiting for exactly them to open. And in the half second the doors were open, I saw the button panel over his shoulder. My floor was lit. The number of the floor I was sleeping on, our floor, was the one glowing on that panel, which meant the elevator had been coming here, to this floor, carrying him in the middle of the night. He hadn't wandered up. He hadn't gotten off somewhere and gotten lost. He had pressed our floor on purpose in a hotel where the only place that knew our floor was a front desk he'd spent the whole evening leaning on, telling everyone he worked there. He looked at me, and he smiled. The same easy bar smile, like running into me in an elevator at 4 a.m. was the most natural thing in the world. "Oh, hey," he said, soft, pleased, like he'd found me. And every alarm I owned went off at once. A man who said he worked here, who slipped off to the front desk all night, riding the elevator to the exact floor of the two women he'd been buying drinks, at the hour he'd know they were asleep. He didn't end up here. He came here. I did the only thing my body would let me do, which was not get in. I did not step into that box with him. I gave him a tight, dead little nod, the kind that closes a door, and I said, "I forgot something," and I stepped back. And I watched his face do a small thing, a flicker, as the situation he'd built came apart by 1 inch. She's not getting on. And the doors started to close between us, and right up until they shut, he held that smile on me, watching me through the narrowing gap, all the way down to nothing. The doors closed and the car carried him down, away, off my floor. And I did not wait to see if it stopped and came back. I went down that long corridor faster than I have ever walked, key card out and shaking, to our door. And I got it open and got inside and threw the bolt and the latch and stood with my back against it, heart slamming, listening for the elevator to return. I woke my friend. I told her he was in the building, on our floor, in the middle of the night, and that we'd never told a single person where we were. And I watched her understand, in the dark, what that left as the only explanation. We did not call the front desk. That's the part that tells you everything. The front desk is what you're supposed to call. It's the safe number, the help, the institution. And we sat on the bed in the dark and realized we couldn't use it. Because if he really worked there, the desk was him. And if he didn't work there, then the desk was where he'd gotten our floor anyway. Which meant either way, Calling the desk meant telling the leak exactly which locked door to send him to. The one place built to keep us safe was the one place we no longer dared to trust. So we did the small, frightened, sensible things instead. We pushed a chair under the handle. We stayed up with every light off, watching the strip of corridor light under the door for a shadow to break it. We packed, in the dark, ready to go the second it was morning. And the night just held. No knock, no shadow under the door, no elevator stopping again that we could swear to. He never came to the room. He didn't have to make us feel hunted. He'd already done that by simply being on our floor, in a building where only the desk could have put him there, and letting us lie awake doing the math. We checked out at first light, and we never reported it, and I've made my peace with why. What would I have said? A man rode an elevator. He smiled at me. He pressed a floor. None of it is a crime you can hand anyone. We never learned his name. We never learned if he worked there or just knew how to seem like he did. He stayed a stranger. And I think about that night most in the small, ordinary moment of checking in somewhere new, sliding my ID across a counter, watching someone type my name and my room into a screen, and trusting, the way you have to, that the people on the other side will guard it. Most of the time they do. That night taught me it's still a belief and not a lock. I don't tell this one to make anyone afraid to travel. People have to sleep somewhere, and a hotel is mostly just a hotel. I tell it because I used to think the danger of a strange place was a stranger getting in, a forced lock, a window, a face that didn't belong. That night taught me the danger is quieter than that. It's a man who belongs completely, who says the 4 words that make a whole building trust him, and learns where you're sleeping from the desk that's supposed to protect it. So now I guard my room like it's a secret, because it is one. I don't say my number out loud. I don't trust a uniform with where I lay my head. It's a smaller way to travel. It's also why I still get to. And let's never meet. 3 places I paid to feel safe in. A host who kept the only key to the door I slept behind and turned it at night before I could answer. A man in a building's uniform who couldn't find my unit on a list, so he stood under my balcony and counted up to it. And a stranger who said he worked at my hotel and rode the elevator to my exact floor, holding a number I never gave anyone but the front desk. None of them broke in. They didn't need to. The place already knew where I was, and so did they. So before you close the tab, ask yourself the quiet question. Of those 3, the host with the inside key, the worker counting your floor, the "I work here at 4 a.m., which one would you have explained away to be polite or because the lock looked good enough? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe so the next one reaches you before you check in. And the next time you lock a door in a place that isn't yours, ask who else can open it and what their job already lets them know about where you sleep.